An Asgardian is born already carrying the strength of a god, and if you had been born one, you would carry flesh and bone 3 times denser than a human's, a body that barely ages once you reach adulthood, and a small spark of ancient magic running through your blood. A Viltrumite is born looking almost exactly human, but if that had been your bloodline instead, your body would never stop climbing, growing stronger with every year you survive and every fight you walk away from. One of these beings starts near the top and stays there. The other starts modest and never stops rising. Now let us actually think about what that means. Start with the Asgardian side because you need to understand what that bloodline actually gives you before you can understand what happens when you add something else to it. If you carry Asgardian blood, your flesh, muscle, and bone are roughly 3 times denser than human tissue. That density alone is where most of your strength and durability comes from. It is not a trick, it is not a spell, it is just thicker, tougher biological material doing what thicker, tougher material does when you get hit or when you try to lift something heavy. On top of that density, you heal fast. Injuries that would keep a human in a hospital for months close up on you in days. Your lifespan stretches into the thousands of years, and here's the part people miss. You age like a normal human for roughly the first 2 decades of your life, and then that aging effectively grinds to a halt. You get one normal childhood, and then you get millennia of standing still, biologically speaking. But there is a second layer to being Asgardian, and it matters as much as the physical one. You carry a small piece of the Odinforce, the same ancient magic that fuels your kings and your sorcerers. Most Asgardians never train that spark into anything visible, and if that were you, it would sit there dormant, a genetic inheritance more than an active power. Still, its presence means your body is not purely physical the way a human body is. You have one foot in the mystical world at all times, and that matters when you consider what can actually hurt you. You can be cut down by conventional force if someone hits hard enough, but you're also vulnerable to enchanted weapons and mystical attacks in ways that pure physical toughness does not protect against. Your power has a shape to it. It is enormous, but it has a ceiling, and part of what defines that ceiling is how much of that latent magic you ever learn to use. Now set that aside completely and look at the Viltrumite side, because these two systems do not work anything alike. If you were a Viltrumite, you would look human. That's the first strange thing about it. There is no visual tell, no glowing eyes, no obvious alien marker. What is different is buried at the atomic level. Your biology would be built from what their own mythology calls smart atoms, atoms capable of forming chemical bonds thousands of times stronger than a human's. That's where your strength would actually come from, not muscle mass, not density in the simple sense, but bonds at a molecular level that make your tissue almost absurdly hard to break. As an adult Viltrumite, you could lift somewhere in the range of tens to well over 100 tons without strain, and the strongest among them go far beyond that. Here's the part that separates a Viltrumite from almost every other powerful being in fiction. Your strength wouldn't be fixed, it would grow. The longer you lived, the more combat you survived and the serious injuries you recovered from, the stronger, faster, and tougher you would become. This is not training in the way a human athlete trains. It's closer to your biology treating hardship as fuel. A young Viltrumite soldier and a centuries-old Viltrumite general are not playing in the same league, even though they started from the same baseline, and you would climb that same ladder your whole life. Your aging would work in the opposite direction of most species, too. Instead of slowing down and weakening with age, you'd decelerate your aging even further as you got older and simply keep getting more dangerous. Your healing factor would let you shrug off wounds that would kill nearly anything else. Though it has real limits, you could not regrow a severed limb, and damage to your heart specifically could cripple even your recovery. You would also carry one very specific weakness, a delicate inner ear that leaves you vulnerable to certain sound frequencies, capable of causing crippling pain or worse. And critically, Viltrumite genetics are documented as dominant. If you had a child with another species, your traits would tend to override the other parents, both in appearance and in raw power output. So, now put these two bloodlines into you and walk through what actually happens. The dominant genetics of the Viltrumite side mean your growth pattern almost certainly follows the Viltrumite model first. You're not someone who peaks in their 20s and then coasts for a few thousand years like a typical Asgardian. You're someone who keeps getting stronger with every year and every fight, the same way a full-blooded Viltrumite does, except now that engine is running inside a body that also carries Asgardian density and an Asgardian's dormant connection to magic. That combination closes one of the biggest gaps in a Viltrumite's profile. A pure Viltrumite has no magical resistance at all. Nothing in their biology has ever had to deal with it, which is why enchanted weapons and mystical attacks are one of the few things capable of threatening them. You, carrying Asgardian blood, likely inherit at least partial resistance to exactly that category of threat, meaning you're not just physically unstoppable in the Viltrumite sense, you're also far harder to hurt through the one channel that normally works against that kind of physiology. Longevity stacks in a similar way. Asgardians already live for thousands of years and stop aging early. Viltrumites decelerate their aging further the older they get. Combine both and you get an almost absurdly long active lifespan, one that keeps compounding in power for the entire length of it instead of plateauing early the way a purebred Asgardian eventually does. Your healing factor likely inherits from both sides as well, meaning recovery from injury is not just fast, it's aggressive, closer to the Viltrumite model of literally growing stronger from what should have been a setback. Not everything gets erased, though. The inner ear vulnerability is tied to dominant Viltrumite genetics, so there's a real chance you still carry some version of that weakness, even if Asgardian toughness blunts how badly it affects you. And your heart remains your heart. No amount of hybrid biology changes the fact that catastrophic damage to a vital organ is still catastrophic. You're not a being with zero weaknesses. You're a being whose weaknesses shrink dramatically, while your ceiling, the one thing that limits a purebred Asgardian, effectively disappears. Strip away every technical detail, and here's what you're left with. A purebred Asgardian is powerful the day they're born and largely stays that way. A purebred Viltrumite starts modest and becomes terrifying only after decades of survival. You don't have to choose between those paths. You get to walk them both at once. And you never have a reason to stop.